Well, the real world. Which leads me to Richard Oswald, who would shovel dirt with me all day long, and then he'd get into the cab of a freight truck and go on to Chicago. I would go home and take a shower and go to bed. And right along with Rich was Gary Pryor, retired Navy submariner. Now, Gary Pryor had a lot of experience in the Navy, and he had a lot of real fun stories to share. I can't share them. This is polite company, but trust me, he was a lot of fun. He was a school teacher when we worked with him, but boy, could he ever sweat on the end of a shovel. And speaking of shovels, we wanted access to this new addition here on the ground level, so we had to prepare a sidewalk along the side. I think that's still there, the sidewalk, so that people could come out of the parking lot with a wheelchair or whatever, casket or whatever, and move on into the social hall. Oh well. Shirley Walton was the guardian of the shrubbery. And with the threat of physical pain almost leading to sterility, Shirley said, no, these plants are not going to be moved. Well, it took some skillful negotiation in order to get Shirley to be quiescent long enough for us to remove those, and oh, how she did smart over those wonderful shrubs. Remember those days? And then Shirley also was one who loved the kids. And I'll never forget going on a trip out to Antelope Island on a day camp. We went out there and had a wonderful, wonderful time. The beginning of many, many times. But one thing I wanted to say about Shirley, she was here that day when I first came. And she was here throughout the whole time. And a lot of things went on in Shirley's life that we're not going to talk about. But we know what we're talking about. But I can tell you this much. With all of the stuff that went along in Shirley's life, she was here. She was here for the kids. She was here when the church was open. And she was a blessing to each and every one of us. Thanksgiving, just as right now, leads into the Advent Festival. And you got a flyer in the bulletin. And the making of ornaments, which tracks my mind straight to Bruce Williams. Bruce Williams loved Advent and the Advent Festival, and he and I enjoyed putting the tree up and getting the lights on it, so that after all the ornaments were made downstairs and they were brought up, how he enjoyed holding the ladder for the little kids to get up and hang the ornaments. It was a wonderful thing to see Bruce. And how he loved Silent Night. Wonderful man. Busy, he was busy with selling equipment in mine safety and so forth. But when he was in town, he was here. And his heart was right here in this church. Now one day Archie Martin made a comment to me that I was a man's pastor. I don't know how you get that. But I suppose that means that the women may have been neglected during my time here. I hope you didn't feel all that way, but neglected. But I want you to take another slant on that. I think that what was regarded as neglect probably was me just having enough sense to get out of the way and let them take over and run the church. I knew these ladies kept the church going, and I regarded them, and I regard them to this day, as the backbone of the church. Jane Newswander, who did what was needed to be done on just about every occasion. If it was cleaning up a mess that was here, or whether it was out around the grounds out here in the middle of March or April or whatever that was, and planting flowers out there. I can remember, colder than all get out. I didn't want to be out there, but she was out there planting the flowers. needed to be done. Patty Lemon saw to the office output, bulletins, pushed the music program, whatever she could do. Rena Martin loved us all, took care of the keys, took care of the messages that came into the church and passed them on to me. She represented the church at the area meetings, association meetings, and Church Women United. Cherry Shawstead had a burden for mission and led the VBS and looked after shut-ins all through that time. And Phyllis Allen had commitments at Camp Utah and here, and it was around about all the time you could look forward to seeing her and enjoy her hard work, the fruits of her hard work. And then there was Kathy Scharf. Remember Kathy Scharf? Who shared of her largesse and her means and wanted to see this building completed and gave and gave and gave. And in addition to that, she took the young boys of the church different kinds of outings, took them to her cabin, took them around town. And First Baptist Church of Salt Lake, who helped us raise money for the building up here. And they loaned us one of their real treasures. A gentleman by the name of Ross Mitchell. Now if you go into First Baptist Church of Salt Lake, you see all that wonderful woodwork that's done throughout that whole building, both the sanctuary and the chapel and all around. That's Ross Mitchell's work. I called Ross Mitchell. I said, Rich Oswald made us a latch hook rug. And we need to have a way of displaying that. Could you come up with something? He showed up here and took one look around and built that magnificent frame around that rug. Never charged us a dime. He and his son came and worked and put it all together. And there it is, to the glory of God and to this church, this wonderful tapestry. I could say so much more about people with special skills who offered them to lead the church. Bill Smeltzer, Pat, always thinking of ways of helping, even come up with ways in which to wrap the bandages. And what wonderful things can be said and come to mind when we think of Marv and Mary Magnuson, or Jerry Oswald, or Gene and Warren Wilson. My goodness, that Warren Wilson was a strong man. Oh, he was, he was an engineering officer on the Seawolf, and yet, boy, he could get a hold of a shovel, and oh, how he could dig. And then that whole family of Rasmussens. It's hard for me to keep them straight, but there was a bunch of them that came here. A bunch of sisters married to some fellows, and it was wonderful to see them. And I know I'm in great trouble right now. So I'm going to have to ask you to help me out. I want you to shout names like Bev Jones. Shout them out. See, my period in here is just a little blip on the whole thing here, 50 years. But if you remember some that need to be mentioned and so forth, and you remember them like, you know, like Doreen Case and Ruby Marcus. Shout somebody out who comes to your mind that you would like to have heard, whose name you'd like to have heard in this meeting this morning.
Jerry Samuelson and the Boy Scouts.
Jerry Samuelson, you better believe it. Good Democrat too, by the way. Okay, I want to know it. A little bit louder, Jerry. I can't hear so good.
I said the only Democrat.
Wayne and Betty Cook, the library.
Let's hear it again.
Wayne and Betty Cook.
Oh yeah, Wayne and Betty Cook. I was trying to think of their names and yours.
Brian Olinskas and his wife Roberta.
Yeah, Brian Olinskas. We still get a birthday card or a Christmas card from them. Doing well.
Grishams.
Grishams. Yes, way back.